And we are going to jump into our first presentation for today. So thank you again for being here. Without any further ado, I'm going to pass the session along to our first presenter of the day, Ken Yonick from the Izaak Walton League of America Henry Enstrom chapter. So Ken, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn for anybody else. COVID has been very difficult on a membership. Having to switch to off-site meetings resulted in a lot of members simply disengaging. And so we're rebuilding that capacity. But along the way, we discovered that outdoor activities would attract a whole lot of people, especially our members in falls, because they at least felt safe doing that. And that's really what we did. If we look at what the Izaak Walton League does, our major focus is on environmental education, recreation, and conservation. And so we developed a number of projects over the course of the last year plus. Many of these were group projects, but some of them, because we're a small group, some of them were individual projects where people had expertise or interest in certain things. When we first got into the 2020 COVID year and we were in a what the heck do we do now, we had some contacts with the land manager for the state game lands in Green. And he led us into the first fall project was installing bird nest boxes, bluebird boxes and wood duck boxes in a wetland in the state game land. And that got a dozen of our members out. We put up 25 bird boxes and a half a dozen wood duck boxes. And that was cool. The following spring for Earth Day, we planted about 120 tree seedlings as part of a wildlife hedgerow development in the same state game land. I will hedge and say this wasn't a riparian zone, probably zone 2, but wasn't designed as a riparian buffer, but would certainly not hurt because we ended up planting these 120 some tree seedlings across 3 large empty fields that were at the bottom of the drainage, just you'd call it in the floodplain of the South Fork of 10 Mile Creek. From the education standpoint, we had other members who helped to tutor the Environthon students in some local high schools in Green in preparation for their competition. We developed a program to offer scholarships to, at this point, we're trying to decide how many, but to the Wildlife Leadership Academy from those Environthon students who were committed to it. We've typically offered 1 or 2. We've already offered our first one this year, and we have to, in our next meeting, develop a policy as to how to go forward. We offered up to 3 Wildlife Leadership Academy scholarships plus family memberships to the successful applicants. We've just established, because we've had some generous benefactors, another scholarship fund for post-secondary education environmental students. And at this point, we'll award at least 2 scholarships annually as part of the whole education support. Personally, I had a personal interest in another branch of education. I was acquainted with a kids' summer camp in the city of Washington, primarily minority kids, but not solely. And so myself, Jennifer Dan took 1 class, Dr. Bob East from W&J took 1, but we had about 8 sessions, and they included sessions on stream water quality testing. I took my stream monitoring equipment and some household chemicals like vinegar and sodium bicarbonate and pH strips and the conductivity meter, and conducted little classes outdoors. Like anything else, some kids are engaged, some were not. Some middle schoolers were in their own world, but they were a pretty good bunch of kids. We took them, a lesson included stream water quality. I was able to get some AMD samples, and we ran the same series of tests so they could see that. And in one session, we took a field trip down to a site that is the site of the later project, a few more meetings. And then finally, we gave them a lecture on the life cycle of monarch butterfly and did a milkweed planting. After that, we started to get a little more serious in trying to develop, I would say, our constituencies, build while we're trying to build our membership, build better relationships, and we are with the fish and boat officers in Greene and Washington County. We've got them engaged in some projects that we want to work on. We followed. Now we get down to the stream, and I see I got maybe 5 minutes left. We, in the course of doing stream monitoring, found what looked to be like a passive remediation site of an AMD on Pigeon Creek in the Monongahela area in the Mid-Mon Valley. But it turns out to be one of the oldest installations in the country, going back to 68 or 69, if not the oldest. And it's been badly maintained. And we were successful in getting the recommendation from the DEP and engaged the fish and boat officer and Jennifer Dan from the Conservation District and the local Sportsman's Club. We're in fact meeting at this AMD site next week, working toward filing a Growing Greener grant to update it, both a maintenance update and an upgrade. So that's one project that we'll be working on the stream. The fish and boat officer, he had serious issues on the second stream, Pike Run, which is in the California area. And so he took a couple of us out on a tour of the stream and identified several areas where serious bank erosion and siltation was taking place. In the course of that, we made contact with a group of Cal U, Jose Taracito, Dave Putton, and Dave too, who would be interested in perhaps cooperating with us on remediating these. We'll be meeting with them again shortly. And just had a phone conversation the other day with a fellow from West Beth Township on 10 Mile Creek, which is another one of the major tributaries in the Mid-Mon. And he's a new member of the Peters Creek Watershed Association. And we've invited him to our next board meeting on Monday to see if there are ways we can cooperate. So if we've got projects going on 3 major tributaries in the Mid-Mon, I think we're doing okay there. Those are hard projects and take a long time to develop. For next season, we've already lined up a trout stocking, a bank cleanup on a lake in South Greene, and another late summer bank cleanup on the South Fork of 10 Mile. All of this, you know, in the habit of trying to rebuild our capacity. The capacity that suffered the most was the stream monitoring, whereas through some personnel losses and others, that program just kind of fell apart, and we're going to have to build capacity along the way. But for the present, if we can get our members to show up outdoors for these other activities, we think we're doing good there. Thank you. I'm done.
Thanks, Ken. And it looks like we did have one question in the chat from Tally asking any follow-up data on the use of those bird boxes by the intended species.
Oh, no, we haven't done that. We talked to the state game manager, and that's a good thing to do, but it's kind of out of the way and hard for us to get there. We had one, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with the birds, kind of disturb them in nesting. It was easy to go through the tree planting site and kind of say, okay, some of these are doing real well, got a lot of new growth, some aren't. We spaced them out over several hundred yards of a meadow because the game manager had advised us that which we knew, the bluebirds were very territorial and they should be scattered hundreds of yards apart. But he said, it doesn't matter, you don't have to do that because if you put them closer together, tree swallows will nest in the adjacent ones and they don't see the tree swallows as a competitor. And they both will feed happily on that kind of marshy meadow, which they ring. So at that point, you know, maybe somebody can give me a clue as to how I would determine whether or not these are being used. I guess we could go down after the nesting season. Anybody want any suggestions on that?
I guess I just thought it would be, was this on state game lands?
Yeah, it's on a state game land in Greene County.
I guess my assumption was, but not to put that the property owner would just be evaluating successful usage, or I don't know. No, I didn't really mean to put it on you.
No. One of the things that is kind of difficult, because it is on the state game land, if this was property that we were responsible for example, follow-up maintenance on the trees, et cetera, would be our responsibility. But essentially it's the state game land's property. So once we planted them and once we made a tour and said, okay, these seem to be doing well, and that's their property to manage. But it is a good question about the bird. I'm pretty sure that the land manager is not doing it, and the only one who would do it is if we went down after the nesting season, and and looked in each box to see if they were being used. Good question. We thought about the trees, didn't think about the birds. Thank you.
And perhaps they'd let you put up some game cameras nearby just to capture a few pics of them being used.
Well, that's a good thought. Yeah, thank you.
Heather also offered a comment in the chat. I think you're supposed to clean bird boxes every winter after they've left.
And that's a good comment, because we did clean the wood duck nesting boxes, and that were already installed. So we did clean out a good dozen or so nesting boxes that were in the site, but we haven't done that since. Thank you. Let me make a note there.
Great.
And
well,
Ken, I'll offer one other comment real quick, that as you guys get back up and running with your stream monitoring program, Lisa would be more than happy, I'm sure, to do another demonstration on the waters database so that your members can, take advantage of that platform and be able to have a nice, safe, secure place for the data.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and thank you. That's probably the most difficult one to get started, because we're just recovering some of the data that was lost. Thank you.
Well, great. Thank you, Ken. Really appreciate the update on all of the activities, and look forward to seeing how they progress. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and we'll jump into our second presentation for the day. We have Rivers Waterkeeper Executive Director, Heather Holton Van Tassel. I hope that I did not butcher your name too bad. I'm so sorry about that. It's one of my worst habits, but the floor is yours, Heather.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen here real quick. Is it full screen share of the PowerPoint? I think so. All right. Well, if not, speak up. So yeah, well, thank you all for taking the time to come out today and hear us all talk about all the great work we're doing. And I'm representing through Rivers Waterkeeper. My name is Heather Holton Van Tassel. I'm the Executive Director. And there's my email and our web address, and I will bring that back out later in the talk as well in case you want to write it down. But we are founded in 2009. And we recognize that the three rivers here in the Pittsburgh region are critical to our health, vitality, and economic prosperity in our region and our surrounding communities. And we have a legacy of industrial pollution in our waterways and just a general acceptance of, waters being a little bit more polluted than they should be. So we're a scientific and legal advocate trying to work with these communities to understand that we can clean up our waters. Which leads me to our mission, which is to protect the water quality of the Monongahela, Allegheny, and Ohio rivers and their respective watersheds. And these three rivers make up the headwaters of the Ohio River water basin. And because of this, we really want to strive towards having drinkable, fishable, swimmable waters in these three rivers. And, because of that, we became a member of the Waterkeeper Alliance, which is a global organization that focuses on cleaning our waters all around our globe. We're 300 organizations strong, and it really gives us resources that as a small organization we wouldn't have. So we have access to a lot more knowledge and database of all of our waterkeepers around. So when we have questions, we have, a strong supporting group to help us work through problems. And I mentioned we're a small team. There are 3 of us right now, which is the biggest we've ever been. So we've historically have been 1 person. So I'm Heather, the executive director. We have Captain Evan Clark as our waterkeeper, and he's part-time with us patrolling our waterways, taking water quality samples, and really trying to figure out what's happening in our waters. You'll also find him with Allegheny Cleanways working on their tireless project, bringing out hundreds upon hundreds of tires in our rivers. And you also find him on the Explorer as the captain. We also have Jess Frist, who is our water advocate, and she's taking all the work that Evan is doing and creating a way to make it more accessible for our general communities. She also works part-time with Protect PT as their program manager and helping create a more collaborative working environment in our 2 conservation organizations. And so the types of programs that we focus on are river patrol and pollution response, water quality monitoring, community education engagement, and clean water laws enforcement. And our river patrol and pollution response is really just us being a presence on our 3 rivers. We actively patrol from the Pittsburgh Pool down 3 locks with our waterkeeper boat, which you can see pictured here. And we will respond to any pollution responses that are reported to us. And I'll talk about how you can report pollution in just a moment. We also do active water quality monitoring. And so currently right now we have 25 sites along the 3 rivers that we do seasonal sampling efforts, and we sample for a variety of different things from dissolved solids to nitrates and anions, anything that could be potential indicators of pollution in our waters, but really just trying to get a baseline data report. We also work with the Youghiogheny Riverkeeper on monitoring for nurdles in that region prior to them becoming up and running. And this gives us a baseline of nurdle expectations. And in the future, we're working with multiple groups, including Three Rivers Quest here, to start doing some grab samples of water quality along this region as well, so we understand the baseline before this big industry gets up and running. And we are constantly reevaluating and creating baseline data along our rivers. I do want to point out that one big, strong supporter in this work is at the Water Collaboratory at the University of Pittsburgh, who has helped us provide supplies for water quality sampling. They've helped us create an understanding of where we should be monitoring the data, and they're currently helping us analyze the data as well. And some of the things that we look for when we're patrolling and monitoring, we're looking for, one is industrial pollution. And here's a variety of different types, such as, we have acid mine drainage, some outflows. We have some coal that you can get some, dust particles settling into our waterways, and just general outflows that you'll see there. We also look at habitat degradation. We look for invasive species, dredging of our waterways, and of course our big litter problems. And we work with Allegheny Cleanways to help figure out how to get that big pollution out of the water that is tangible. And then we also focus on the transportation of dangerous materials. And one of the materials that we're heavily focused on now is the concept of potentially waste barging of fracking waste, which is toxic and radioactive, and it's currently typically transported by rail or truck. But once you put in these big barges, the amount of fracking waste that would be in one load is astronomical compared to a rail or a truck, which means if there is an event of a spill, it can be extremely catastrophic, and it goes straight into our drinking waters. And so what we do when we are focusing on this monitoring is really think about how can we get the community involved in keeping their waterways clean. So we talk to them about what to look for while they're on the rivers, what pollution issues are most prevalent in our rivers, and how to properly report the pollution. We also let them know about any advocacy issues that they should be concerned about when thinking about water pollution in our 3 rivers. We're also going to be relaunching our community watch program called Rivers Watch this spring. So keep an eye out on some training opportunities for that as well. And we really want to build a network of community members monitoring our 3 rivers. Because currently right now, we are responsible for monitoring 125 river miles, and we really can't be everywhere at once. You saw our small John boat, you saw our small team. We're doing the best that we can. And so creating a volunteer network that is knowledgeable in areas of pollution, especially with visual assessment, is going to be critical in order to keep our waterways safe. And so when people are out there monitoring, they might look for fish kills to report. Of course, that acid mine drainage. They might look for foam, and some foam is naturally occurring, but some of it is not. So just being able to take photos and report that, so someone who is more experienced can determine whether or not that's pollution. We can look for sheens for chemical spills, oil spills, and oil on top of the water. And when they find these things, they can report it. So, we really recommend people reporting it to the DEP when it has large chemical spills. But they can also call their local police, emergency responders. They can call us, the Rivers Waterkeeper, and we can either take our boat and go get the samples, or we'll report it to the appropriate authorities. They can do it by device. We have on our website a way for someone to report pollution and upload photos. And then there's a water reporter app that is a great way to report pollution as well. And I recommend that you always take photos of whatever you're seeing and submit it somewhere, and report any smells or any other types of senses you're using to notice that pollution there. And then finally, we really enforce our citizens' right to clean water. And we work with our community of legal team and our legal team at the University of Pittsburgh Environmental Law Clinic to identify areas of insufficient water quality data, inconsistent monitoring, minimal permit application review that has prevented this meaningful action towards improving our water quality. As mentioned before, we're a scientific and legal advocate. We focus on holding polluters responsible. So that means we collect data, which I've shown throughout today's talk, but also that we have the opportunity to take legal action if needed. And we really want to be the voice for the people and empower the citizens to report and take action when their water quality is threatened. One of our historical wins was in 2012, where we, along with the Environmental Law Clinic and Clean Water Action, filed a lawsuit against McKee Sport for discharging wastewater into our waterways, the Monongahela River. And because of that case, we actually were able to set a precedent for those to no longer dump discharge into our clean waters. Some of our current advocacy issues focus on that fracking waste or the barging and additional uses of fracking waste. And in the picture, you'll see proposed river terminals for barging of the fracking waste. Deregulation of our water quality standards, closing loopholes that are constantly created in our legislation. We're always monitoring permits that are being submitted and making sure that the future work is in compliance with our clean water laws. So how can you help? Well, we have a small team, so volunteers are always welcome. And we take those for on the water, behind the computer, and out at the events we have. If you are interested in being a volunteer, please email ops@riverswaterkeeper.org or go onto our website and find the volunteer tab and submit your information that way. There's a couple little plugs I'm going to make before I end because I'm probably running out of time here. But this year we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Clean Water Act. So look for multiple events throughout the year. And you can find us and follow us on our socials, which is Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And then if you shop on Amazon, please add us as your preferred Smile charity. If you want to get social with us, assuming that COVID gets better, we will be at Wiggle Whiskey on April 23rd from 12 to 4. and just mention Three Rivers Waterkeeper, and 9.99% of the sales will go back to protecting our waters. And if you're running the Pittsburgh Marathon, feel free to reach out to us and we can help you run for a reason and set up a program to raise money for Three Rivers Waterkeeper as well. So I just want to thank you all for giving me your time today. There's my contact information, and feel free to reach out to me at any time. And I think my time is up, so I will stop sharing now. So thank you all.
Thanks, Heather. It's great to see all of the amazing things that you're doing up there. It does look like we do have just one quick question from Tally. Do you submit the water quality data to the PADEP for the integrated water quality report?
We currently don't, but that's a really great idea. And so thank you for bringing that up. I don't see why we can't submit it, so we can do that.
Perfect. And we do have just a couple of minutes, so I do just want to open the floor for anybody that has any other questions or comments. If you want to come off of mute or type anything into the chat, you are more than welcome. Before we jump into our last presentation for the day. It looks like Tally typed in one more question. Does anyone on here submit data during the data solicitation?
I meant for the water quality report.
For the water quality report, yeah.
I'll say that if there's any groups in PA that would like to be able to have us assist them in getting that data out of the waters database and up to the integrated water quality report, just let us know. We're more than happy.
So you
to help
guys
with that.
don't either, like from Three Rivers? Quest,
We don't,
like-
because the watershed groups own the data. We're simply allowing them to use it as a platform for storing and saving their data. So without having, you know, their push for us to do that, we're more than happy to. But we've never had a group ask us to help them with that before. But it's a great thing. I have a note written down to make sure that we follow up with folks and look for that deadline, so that as it's coming up, we can reach out to the different organizations in Pennsylvania and see if they want their data to be included in that report. Very good point, Tally.
Any idea about West Virginia?
On West Virginia, I would actually need to dive a little bit further. And Martin, you may know if there's, if West Virginia has a similar state program for citizen monitoring data.
They do, and they also make,
Yeah.
they also put out requests every 2 years specifically for data to go into the integrated report. From what I've seen, watershed groups don't very often participate just because the story is pretty well known. Unfortunately, the streams don't change their status very often. Sometimes the watershed group will submit data to make sure that DEP knows about not only the main stem of a creek, but this trib that they would like to have officially on the 303D list, so it's a target for remediation, although that isn't 100% crucial either. And then Friends of Cheat recently has been trying to submit data to show that streams are no longer impaired. And they have been doing that not really in response to the solicitation, but sort of through emailing the right people at DEP and saying, how do we convince you? How many samples do we have to take and how many places?
Martin, maybe we can talk about that next week when you come up and talk with the watershed group here in Wheeling.
Sounds great.
Great. Well, it seems like every session we have everybody coming together to resolve issues that we have and moving forward and progressing forward. So love to see that. Thank you again, Heather, for the presentation. It was extremely informative. And like I said, I look forward to seeing everything that continues to progress and the Three Rivers Waterkeeper area. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and we'll jump into our last presentation for the day, which is the Scrubgrass Creek Watershed Association. So Tom, Carlos, Harris, the floor is yours.
Thank you. A lot of people wonder where the name of our creek came from. Historic lore says that the Indians used to scrub their clothing on some type of vegetation at the mouth of the creek. And so that's where the name comes from. The spell check always turns red when you type in scrubgrass, which is kind of funny. Anyway, until the mid-1950s, the Scrubgrass Creek was a premier trout stream in western Pennsylvania. But at that point in time, they began surface mining in the headwaters of the creek. And it subsequently caused the death of the stream as far as the fisheries and most other creatures. The geographic location of our watershed is in southwestern Venango County. It's about 25,400 acres. It's, as you can see on the map here, you can see by the red, the impaired AMD tribs that we have. The watershed is about 5.8% of the total county land mass. It's 93% privately owned. And unfortunately, not only do we have acid mine drainage, but we also have hundreds of abandoned and orphan wells, which essentially act as conduits to bring the acid mine drainage to the surface and thus to the watershed. The history of the organization is that the final report of the Allegheny National River Wild and Scenic Act of the Southern Corridor stated that the Scrubgrass Creek was the most impacted with acid mine drainage in the Southern Corridor, which runs from Franklin to East Brady. Our former senator, State Senator Mary Jo White, was, we call her the mother of growing greener. One of the first grants given, Growing Greener grants, was given to the Scrubgrass Creek after a rivers conservation plan was formulated, and that plan was funded by the Venango County Commissioners. The Growing Greener plan of the creek was finished in 2000, and it required an organization to be formed, a watershed organization, as part of the funding. Neil Parker from the U.S. Department of Agriculture Conservation District out of Clarion asked me if I would form a watershed organization because of my previous environmental activities in the area. In 2001, the organization was born. 2003, it was incorporated, and 2010, we became a 501c3. As a local riparian landowner, I have frontage on the main stem and a trib, and Logan Harris owns land frontage on the main stem, lower main stem. I went out and tried to get riparian landowners to join the organization. Our membership is not very big, and we have about 12. We have 12 dedicated members, and we have quietly just gone about our business. And I think our record shows that we are capable of getting things accomplished. I'm going to read you our mission statement. The purpose of the Scrubgrass Creek Watershed Association is to restore and maintain a high level of water quality and biodiversity throughout the Scrubgrass Creek watershed. This will be done through education, monitoring, protection, and remediation with local group and community involvement. I'd like now to talk about what our record has been in past 20 years. First of all, according to the study, we plugged 34 abandoned and orphan wells. And as I said before, we have the double whammy of the abandoned wells bringing the water to the surface, contaminated water to the surface. We actually had wells we plugged that were flowing. You can look through the woods and see the water coming out of the ground. The other thing we've done is this map that you see shows our first passive treatment system on the right, upper right. And that's called the Steroid Site. It's our highest iron discharge in the watershed and the greatest AMD contributor. Across the creek, you can see it's down here. Across the creek, you can see where in this area we have what we call it's down here by the road,
Right here.
US 91, which is upper Scrubgrass 91. And also we did a Hall Road culvert. That's the highest aluminum content in the watershed. Just quickly, I'll tell you that on US 91, the aluminum was 13 milligrams per liter before we started. It's now 0.2 milligrams per liter. The iron in the Steroid Site was 1.6 milligrams per liter, and now it's 0.5 milligrams per liter. So those are our two passive treatment systems. And as you all know, it's not very passive when you have to stir the limestone and rinse it off, which we've done on 3 occasions so far with the Steroid Site. Bullion Run is a native brook trout tributary in the watershed. It's the only one we have. We work with landowners, the Venango County Conservation District, PennDOT, and Trout Unlimited to stabilize a stream bank from the mouth to approximately 500 meters upstream. And recently, the Coldwater Heritage, along with Trout Unlimited, has done a fish study on Bullion Run, and they're waiting for that report. We've had an outreach program with fifth and sixth graders at the Victory Elementary School. We've done cleanups for 15 years on Earth Day. What I'd like to do now is turn this over to Logan Harris, our treasurer, who will speak to the monies that have been invested in the creek over the last 20 years. Logan.
Hello. So I'm here mostly to give you the figures. Tom's giving you most of the what's going on. So as Tom mentioned, the original study was $229,520 with Bruce Dixon and Neil Parkin. So this was before we started our group. Our first big, then the commissioners, Venango County commissioners, did a study to recommend what should be done after the original plan, how things could go. That was $40,000, I believe. Our first big project was in 2002. We got a Growing Greener grant for $166,324. We were able to plug 25 wells with that money. Then the Venango County commissioners were able to give us 25,000 more in 2005 to 2006. We were able to plug 9 more wells that were leaking. Then our next big project was the Steroid Site that Tom mentioned, which was done completely with bond forfeiture money from the strip mining. And they had set up sites and then abandoned them. And we were able to redo those with the bond forfeiture money. The Steroid Site is the highest iron discharge in our that we know of in our system. So that was $375,000 that was all bond forfeiture money. So in between, we've had a lot of help from the Venango Conservation District and Trout Unlimited, Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds. All these people have helped us, and we were able to do a lot of water sampling. Then with information from our water sampling, we were able to obtain a Growing Greener grant to do US 91, which is across the stream from the Steroid Site. It was the highest identified aluminum discharge in our system. We're just now closing that project up. It was also a culvert replacement project. There was a collapsed culvert that we used for our haul road to the Steroid Site. And it backed up the water, and by replacing the culvert, we were able to restore upper scrubgrass to the original flow, and to make fish and other water animals be able to go back and forth. So it improved this stream just by replacing the culvert. Right now, the projected cost, it's still being finalized. It's $217,804. Meanwhile, we've been doing a cold water heritage grant with Venango County Conservation District on Bullion Run, which is our best stream in our watershed, which our watershed goes into the Allegheny River near Kennerdale. And that was Trout Unlimited and the Conservation District we received $5,000 from Trout Unlimited, and a study was done on that, which we're just closing that up too. So I know I'm forgetting something. We've worked with, I have to mention Bob Hedden with Hedden Environmental, that's helped us very much, and Amy Wolf with Trout Unlimited. Without those people, we couldn't accomplish most of what we've done. Also with the Conservation District, they've been very helpful. So altogether, I'm probably missing. I do want to mention we just received a Greenways grant. One of our big problems is keeping the limestone clean, which it has to be cleaned or replaced on a regular schedule. And it can be hard to get money for that. So Tom has been able to get a Greenways grant, which we can use for maintaining the system. We were also able to add in our US 91, we were able to add we were able to add funds for cleaning the limestone.
Yeah.
And Pennsylvania Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds was very helpful with that. So altogether, there's probably a little bit more than this, but there's been $1,123,128 plus spent on our watershed, which as Tom mentioned before, it's full of the oil wells and strip mining. So it's still a long ways to go. We're still doing monitoring and looking for other discharges to work on. So I'll just ask Tom, did I skip anything? Was there anything?
You did fine.
I clarify something on that. Hello, I'm Carlos. I just wanted to share this screen and this map again. And I'm the treasurer. I'm the newest member of the association. And I'm the technical assistant here for the computer. But I just wanted to clarify that this imagery is 2019, Google Earth imagery from 2019. So the other two big projects that we mentioned are not shown here. And I wanted to point to the areas where they, here we now have, which was built in 2020, a system just like this one, which is a Steroid system. It's called US 91, but it's half the size. It has the limestone beds and it has a settling pond too, half this size. The culvert, if you see this water here, that water was blocked there because this culvert, there's a culvert here on the road that was had to be replaced. That's another big project that we had. So now that water is able to flow freely, you know. And so I just wanted to make sure that to do justice to the imagery, to point to the big projects that are not shown here. Tom?
I just want to thank everyone for their attendance. It's quite a distinguished group, it seems. I hope that we were clear enough for your folks' understanding. We're hoping the next thing we want to do is work with Dr. Bruce Dixon to do some monitoring in the main stem, because we really, over 20 years, we've been concentrating on the upper levels of the headwaters of the stream. And so we really want to try to determine what, because we have a lot of historic data. We haven't really yet determined what our impact of our systems have been, you know, in the long term. Anyway, thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for that really informative presentation. We really appreciate it. We do have a couple of comments / questions in the chat that I'm just going to run through really quick. So Tally said, for the benefit of your watershed group members, POWR is hosting that workshop on May 19th. She does have the information for that workshop linked into the chat for you to check out. And then Jennifer ended up actually putting a link for submitting data for the 2024 Integrated Waters Report to PADEP. So that's in the chat as well. Tally offered after that, while we're on the topic of public comment, the period for the 2022 draft report is still open. That link is also in the chat. Then she also offered that it sounds like you guys are doing great work. The POWR has a successes and impact survey open, and we're asking that all watershed groups to respond. And she's also offered any assistance for any questions that you might have, along with the SurveyMonkey link for you to fill out, as well as her email to reach out. And then Ken ended up having a question regarding how frequently does limestone need cleaning or replenished?
That's a good question. It turns out that the iron discharge in the Steroid Site was much greater than anticipated, or was, I think that the assumption was that it would come out quicker than it has. So we wind up, what they do is they come in with an excavator and they actually dig up the limestone and hose it off and have the water drain into the settling pond. We've done that it's about every 18 months. We've also, at one time, not the last time, the time before, somebody just came in and dug it up. And that was believed to be, kind of a shortcut. It turned out that really only is good for about a year. So the $12,000 that we got from Greenways, which was through the Northwest Region Plan and Development Commission, that is good. We're gonna do that to do both beds in the Steroid. The US 91 has not nearly as much iron, and we're anticipating less maintenance, although we don't know for sure of that. One comment I'd like to make, and I'll shut up, and that is that, as you folks probably know, in the state of Pennsylvania, there's a lot of these sites that have been built and abandoned. And in fact, we have one that was built by the Knox Mining Office probably 12 years ago, and it's never functioned correctly. And there's sites all over the state like that. And yet we are an active group, and we have to go begging for money for operation and maintenance. And I think it's a huge issue, I believe, that has to be addressed, because, you know, organization members get old and other people don't fill in, and then these places get abandoned, and then all this money that's been invested goes down the drain. So I think we're hoping that this infrastructure bill will maybe fill that in with some kind of trust fund or something, but it's a huge problem, we believe.
I know our time's up, but I just want to squeeze one thing in. So our group on our passive treatment systems, we go in once a month and we check alkalinity and pH to make sure, and
Flow.
just make sure the water, the limestone isn't getting too coated, and that gives us an idea of when we need to treat the limestone. So it would be different for each system depending on what's coming in. So, but we monitor that monthly, so we keep up with it.
Great. Thank you for that. It looks like we have a follow-up question. Does the spent limestone need special disposal?
Well, that's a good question too. We're still we're on an abandoned mine site, and we convinced the DEP that since it's an abandoned surface mine site, that we like these ponds that you saw, one of them was cleaned out, where the 2 cells are. That material was cleaned out and disposed of on site rather than put in some landfill. Or so it's almost like, in a sense, it's almost like a brownfield situation where we're at, because we're operating under that old mining permit, as crazy as it sounds, but it works. There's no reason to haul stuff away from a contaminated site, as far as I'm concerned. So the answer would be yes. That once the limestone is spent, we'll dispose of it on the mining site that we're at.
Perfect, thanks. And it looks like Heather has already responded back to Callie, so that's great. We are over our time. It is 11:02, but I just want to open up the floor just very briefly for any final comments, questions before we close up shop for the day. All right. Well, it was amazing presentations again, great discussion. I love coming together and seeing how we all work together to move forward and end up, resolving problems from one another, just from experiences that we're able to share. So it's great. So one last thank you to all of our presenters for their time today, and all of our attendees for being here with us this morning. We hope that you have found this informative session extremely interesting and beneficial. While today is our last session of our 3RQ Reach Roundtable series, don't forget that you can always go back and review our sessions on our YouTube channel, or always stay connected with our program through our 3RQ Facebook page and webpage. And if you are looking for another informative session, of course, my shameless plug for our next West Virginia Water Research Institute virtual seminar series, which will hold its last session in 2 Thursdays, on Thursday, February 17th from 10 to 11. Don't forget to get registered and join us. We will be discussing acid mine drainage research and remediation, with a focus on Lick Run tributary and the Cheat River watershed, the upper Buchanan River, as well as analysis on passive AMD treatment system components. So we hope to see you all there. So thank you again. Have a great rest of your Thursday and a great weekend ahead. Stay dry and warm out there.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.